Since launching in November, the OpenAge Initiative has become a common reference point among many in the age assurance industry. Big names are getting on board with the passkey-based solution born out of compliance provider KID. I'm Joel McConvey, and today I'm talking with the head of OpenAge, Julian Corbett, who also co-founded KID. We're here to talk about OpenAge, and OpenAge is an initiative that came out of KID. And I tend to think of KID as a compliance provider in that it sort of works on a jurisdictional model. So can you start maybe by telling me about how this OpenAge system kind of evolved out of KID and how you ended up with these two entities?
100%, yeah. Exactly. So you've nailed it. KID really is focused on how to create age-appropriate experiences and how to do that, navigating the regulations across 200 plus jurisdictions. And fundamentally, when KID was looking at this problem, just saying there are so many adjustments that need to be made based on age and location of a child or a teen. But in order to do that, and in order to create an age-appropriate experience, you really need to have an age signal that can be trusted. And KID was not really focused on this part of the business. As part of the orchestration for our clients, we ended up working with a number of age verification providers and age verification methods in order to be able to create, a full package solution where you are actually able to navigate your way through, where the age is the start of the compliance. And it's once you have that age signal that then you can create an age-appropriate experience. And so we obviously spent a lot of time thinking around what was happening in the world of age assurance and what would that mean for the internet. And we could see that the direction of travel was potentially a little concerning in terms of some of the issues of friction that this would create on the internet, the costs that would be unbearable for smaller developers and publishers of content, and very real issues of privacy, where we could see there would be increasing resistance from users around the world that were asked to upload biometrics or IDs over and over again. And we felt this was a real challenge for the internet. And we had thoughts around this and saying, here is how we envision that industry should go about solving some of these issues. And then we're like, okay, well, we have quite a clear idea on how to do this, so maybe let's do it. And that's how OpenAge emerged as part of the thinking of KID originally.
So OpenAge works on what's called an age key system. And if I'm understanding it correctly, this is based on FIDO passkeys. So can you tell me a bit about why that model was appealing, why you went in that direction, and what the benefits are of this system?
So long before starting OpenAge, we actually had a series of consultations with a number of stakeholders, which included some of the largest platforms, and we took input from what everybody was doing and obviously followed very closely what groups such as CIPL and We Protect and FOSI were putting forward in this regard. And we were seeing a lot of commonality in terms of what the principles should be behind an approach for an age signal that would be interoperable, reusable, privacy-preserving, and able to be a user-centric solution, which we felt would be a really important pillar to stand on in terms of the positioning and alleviating some of the rightful concerns that users have. And so we looked at a number of approaches. And so we looked at apps, we looked at wallets, we looked at different ways of approaching this. Passkeys are an incredibly elegant solution in the sense that passkeys are native to every OS and every browser. It works cross-platform. It is through the incredible work that has been done by the entities that have adopted passkeys at scale and what the FIDO Alliance has pulled together, something that now is used very, very widely, where the levels of security associated with passkeys are remarkably high. It requires a biometric or your device to be able to unlock and use that passkey. And therefore, all of that work has felt like such an incredible building block to be able to provide a dedicated age credential. And then on top of that, we added all of the double-blind architecture that ensures complete anonymity of the users, i.e., the relying party does not see who that user is. There is no traceability or trackability of a user across the various places that they navigate through the internet. And this really is the kind of trust-building element that feels that it could alleviate many of the concerns that users would have around age assurance. No need to re-upload biometrics or IDs, and knowing that there is no central repository that is able to track where you have been on the internet felt like very important building blocks to make this work.
I'm curious because ultimately, this whole industry, the product is trust. It's who can you trust to, do what they're going to say they're going to do without doing anything else. And so I wonder, has adopting the passkey model helped with building that trust with your clientele, with your customer base? Is there something valuable in having an established entity like a passkey that you can say, look, this is kind of proven?
Yeah, I think you've seen, because we've had quite a lot of rapid adoption since we announced back in November. And I think one of the reasons why people were able to adopt fast from the platform standpoint is that there are very few technical unknowns to this. And also because the passkey is saved on the user's device, it's their passkey. Just from a structure standpoint, it just is able to build that trust that this is not, an entity that is trying to control access to the internet. And then because it's an open standard, today we have a number of other verification providers that have joined the initiative. And so that just broadens significantly the promise of interoperability that Age Keys were designed to provide.
And so on that note, I know you've had quite a few people come on board recently, including Meta, which is a big name, certainly. So how important is it to have a community of platforms using the system that is really broad and speaks to a broad user base?
That's the name of the game. Like, interoperability works because leading platforms are willing to share a signal, or let their users, more appropriately, users save their own data and accept that on other platforms. And so there is no value in an interoperable cross-platform solution if it isn't widely accepted. And I think all of these ideas are great on paper. It only works if there is the kind of adoption across major platforms that means that this can work cross-platform, cross-borders, cross-industries. So you mentioned Meta, which is, obviously a very significant player with billions of users. But equally, we were thrilled that Free Speech Coalition joined the initiative, which for us is equally meaningful, because you're like, okay, well, if on one side you can have entities such as Meta that are seeing this as a good solution, and then you have Free Speech Coalition that represents the adult entertainment industry, otherwise known as porn, that they are actually saying, despite having vehemently fought against age assurance mandates, are saying, yes, we did not want age assurance mandates the way that they were requested, because we felt that this was an issue in terms of First Amendment and just the ability to implement it were very complicated. But they're looking at this now and saying, okay, we have to comply in 25 states in the US now, post the Paxton decision, and a bunch of other jurisdictions where age assurance is required when it comes to adult content. How are we going to do it? So the question is not like whether, it's like how. And if we have to do it, can we do this in a way that is truly privacy preserving? Can we do this in a way that is truly frictionless? Can we do this in a way that truly scales and can be adopted by not only the largest platforms, but also creators of maybe independents? Do they have a path to be able to comply? And so I think when they saw age keys, they were like, okay, that's an approach that we can get behind.
When it comes to adult content or porn, the jury is sort of in with Paxton, and it's difficult to really mount a solid argument that says kids should be able to look at porn. But on the other hand, you have all these regulations coming in that address social media, and Meta, continues to sort of push back against those in certain ways and embrace them in other ways. But as far as the regulation goes, do you, in your model, do you see it as a hurdle or a complement or just part of the ecosystem? What's the piece that regulation plays in this whole puzzle?
From our standpoint, neither of those. It's a reality. I just think that it is a fact that regulators that typically are there to represent the views of the population that they represent have different views and different approaches as to what they think is acceptable at what age, under what conditions. That compliance problem that KID went to solve in terms of like things that have to do with chat at what age, loot boxes at what age, all of those features that you can find. That's something that KID solves. OpenAge, when it comes to age, doesn't have a position on what is good or bad. It has a view that age assurance is clearly on the rise. There are clearly more and more places where age assurance is going to be required. And if that is done at the cost of a functional internet, or if that is done in a manner that carries very significant risk to the privacy of users, or attacks on the entire internet through repeated verification, that creates a broken internet. And we wanted to solve that. So regardless of what regulators may decide in a given country for a given type of content or set at different ages, if age assurance is required, what is the responsible way that can be delivered? And is there a path where users can feel more comfortable with having to comply with these age assurance mandates? And is there a way for platforms to be able to deliver this in a way that isn't punishing both to them in terms of the friction it creates and the concerns that their users would have?
And so looking at Australia, where they've implemented this law, what's your take on the rollout so far? Would you judge it to be a success? Is that something you have an opinion on?
Not particularly. I mean, I think the clearest outcome from what we've seen in Australia is that a number of other countries are leaning in the same direction. And so we have seen a movement where, when it comes to social media, certain jurisdictions want to raise the age. I think they don't like to call it a ban. I think they want to call it a delay as to what is the appropriate age for accessing. And so I think we're going to see more of those laws come into effect. I don't know. In terms of, is it going to be good or bad? I think it's going to take a decade to really know the impacts of these laws. I think that parents, civil society has asked for help. It's very hard individually as a parent to try to limit access to your children if all of their friends have access. And so I think in some ways, part of the reason for the emergence of raising this minimal age comes from that. I think that there's some clearer data that seems to be emerging from limiting access to phones in schools. Seems to be having beneficial effects in terms of like people are speaking, noise level is up, people are playing games and stuff like that. I think it's a question of when and where it is right for children to have access. I think that still needs to be determined per the culture of each country, and we will see. I would take a step back. It's just like this is all pretty new. Like the real emergence, was 2013. Like we've just been just over a decade of the emergence, and it took like 4, 5, 6 years for us to begin to realize. And then algos got better, and just the amount of screen time and the number of children that have phones. And so, society is adapting to very rapid changes that have taken place in terms of digital literacy. And I think that everybody's going to be looking for the best way moving forward. I personally am hopeful that the number of folks, not just civil society, but also platforms, really trying to understand like what are the best ways in order to navigate the digital world that kids and teens are growing up in. I think that that debate, the fact that it is talked about literally daily, is a good thing, because I think people are really focused on this issue and really trying to come up with solutions. Having an age assurance model that actually works in a manner that is interoperable is one important step in that direction. There's lots of other things that need to happen beyond that.
I want to ask quickly, so, adult content and social media have really gotten the bulk of the attention. But, in the Australian context, if you will, the wallaby in the room is gaming. Gaming is this huge industry, and it hasn't really, Roblox has gotten some attention, but it hasn't really been pulled whole hog into the debate yet. And I wonder, I know KID has done some work with gaming companies. What have you seen on that side of the industry in terms of the movement of age assurance? Whether towards or away from it?
I mean, games are under a ton of regulatory pressure for a whole bunch of things. I mean, you can just look at what happened to Epic, which was significant fines that were issued linked to compliance. So I think that there have been actually a ton of requirements around gaming industry, and incredibly fragmented around the world, which is one of the problems that KID went out to solve. And so from that standpoint, I think it might be slightly less in the news on a day-to-day basis, but there is no lack of requirements when it comes to gaming industry today. And what we can see is that more and more games have social elements to it. And so things like chat are very much regulated. Things like loot boxes very much are regulated as it is today.
You mentioned regulatory fragmentation, and this is obviously it's kind of the core problem for KID and OpenAge. As this stuff ages and matures, do you see regulations worldwide kind of converging and coming into alignment, or do you think that this is a landscape that will remain patchwork just by nature of what it is?
When it comes to things like age assurance that can be applied to all forms of regulation, I think that regulators really look to one another and learn off one another. And so we can see from OSA in the UK to how before Brazil, how Australia communicated, and now how Brazil is preparing for what they're doing. I think we have a little bit different of a view maybe in the US, just because of state laws that are, more, every single state is coming up with, positions. But when you're looking at like country regulators and coordination at the European level, you have an emergence of best practices, things like double-blind anonymity that built into what AgeKey provides is an example of something that is spreading. This notion of interoperability, which was, I guess, mentioned maybe a year ago, as you saw at the FTC workshop last week, was I think every single panel talked about the need of interoperability. And so you're seeing these things move kind of in common directions. And I was noticing, like, the same week, like the e-safety commissioner was talking about the role of interoperability towards convergence. And all of these things echo one another. So in that sense, I think there are some common principles around privacy and openness and the ability for users to be able to navigate and understand where and when they can access content that are converging. At the same time, every culture has a slightly different take. And so I don't think that it is realistic, nor necessarily the right thing for it to be like the way Copper originally said, like it's 13 is the age. Well, I think other countries are now saying, well, actually, and so a lot of countries replicated 13. And now you're seeing that move, and defining what is a child by law is something that is evolving. I think, I don't have the stat off the top of my head. We could get it to you afterwards, but I think last year, 67 new jurisdictions or something like that determined for the first time what was the age of a child. And I think only 30% of those determined it as 13. So, and most of them, 15, 16, 18 was the range that determined what is a child, because that is what made sense for that jurisdiction.
Yeah, my 11-year-old would certainly have a different definition of what constitutes a child than many. On the note of sort of interoperability and standardization, what importance do you put on the publication of the age assurance standard, ISO 27566-1, came out last year? What does this do for the industry in terms of setting a baseline?
I think that's great. I am, and we are fully supportive of that. I think there needs to be some standards that can help both the platforms that are using third-party verification solutions and industry to kind of converge and just say, like, okay, there needs to be some minimum standards that are set here, and having an ISO specifically around age assurance is a really positive thing in our view.
I usually like to wrap up by asking people, where do you see the industry and the company in 3 years? And usually people go, 3 years is a crazy amount of time to try and forecast. So, and with the way things are changing in age assurance so quickly, I'll ask, next year this time, what do you think we would be discussing if we had the same conversation?
Things are moving. If you had asked me just 2 months ago, would I believe that the EPPC at the FTC hearing, Claire Morrell, would be talking about how the interoperability and privacy preserving approach of OpenAge is actually an answer to many of the concerns around age assurance? The same week that Alison Bowden from the Free Speech Coalition would be saying, actually, we believe that age key is the solution. The same week that Persona and Veritad and Encode joined the initiative and are now providing, along with the way KID has been doing, age keys to all of their users. That's a monumental shift in an incredibly short amount of time. And obviously, through KID clients, we have a lot of the largest platforms that KID works with are now going to be rolling out age keys independently of that. Meta is going to be supporting it across all of their platforms. And so what we're seeing is some very important building blocks, where this is now across industries. It's going to be present in gaming. Konami just rolled out some age keys because they are preparing for the launch of their next title and are pre-registering their users for age verification using age keys there, all the way to members of Free Speech Coalition that are now saying, like, okay, this is a path forward for adult entertainment industry, to large verification providers that may have originally seen OpenAge as something that could be seen as competitive or at least disruptive to the market. But, along with, let's not forget, Socure that had joined right at the start. These are the largest companies in the space. I mean, Persona and CodeSecure, all multi-billion-dollar companies, and they are saying this is the direction of travel. And so I think I am hopeful, to answer your question, that a year from now, that the reality of interoperability, of common standards, will be something that have already provided great benefits to the wider internet, something that would have built trust with users, that will have grown through the support of platforms, and something that regulators will be looking at as a real advancement in terms of their goals for easy, widespread age assurance when required.
Well, the momentum is certainly there. So I thank you again for coming and sharing your insights and your knowledge with the Biometric Update podcast. And I perhaps we'll catch up at the Age Assurance Standards Summit. If not, maybe we'll touch base again in a year and see how your predictions stand up, Julian.
I think we might have some news between now and then that you'll want to cover. So
all right.
There will surely be opportunities for us to chat.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again for taking the time today, and we'll touch base again soon.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks again to Julian Corbett. You can learn more about OpenAge at openageinitiative.org. And you can always find the latest news on biometrics, digital identity, and age assurance at www.biometricupdate.com.